Hello, this is Kenny Williamson, and welcome back to another episode of Melchizedek Chronicles. In today's episode, we are going to continue on with Dr. Kent Hovind's question and answer series. I believe this is going to be part 5, and it is the last one of this particular series, so I hope you enjoy it. Before we get started with that, I wanted to throw out a couple of updates. One of the updates is that we moved into our new studio, so that's up and running, so that's great. Wanted to let you guys know there's another book out called Demons Among Us that is available on Amazon, so it's available. And also we have a new website up and running. It's called Truth Seekers Ministries, not Ministries, truthseekerministry.org. And so that website is up. It's not 100% functional. There's still a few little bitty things that's got to be worked out, but it is up and running. And I also wanted to make mention that the hosting service that we use for these podcasts is called Buzzsprout. And Buzzsprout, here not too long ago, came out with another thing that they can add to it, which is called text. It's a texting thing that they put on the information in the podcast, and it says, give us a text or something like that. And I have received several. And what happens is kind of misleading, and I didn't know this when I signed up for it, is that I don't actually get a text per se. What I do is I get an email that says I have a message on their little text service. So I am able to go to email and see what it says. However, you are not able to reply to this in any way, and it doesn't tell me who it is or anything else. It's just kind of like a random sentence in an email that says somebody texted it. So I was just going to let you guys know that if for some reason you're listening to this and you see that, send us a text. I am getting that via email, but I don't know who's sending it, and I'm not able to reply to it. So I think what I would do, if you want a reply, like include your email or something, or you can just email us at any time. And there's also going to be a new contact us section on the new website. And the other thing I'm thinking about doing is I've already built up several questions and comments. So what I'm going to do is a questions and comments podcast that goes over each one of them that I have received. So I'm thinking about doing that. But if you have sent one and you really would love a reply, you can send another one with either your email or I guess your phone number, so it could be texted back to, or just give us an email at truthseekers2012@gmail.com, and I'll reply that way. So anyway, thanks again for listening, and here is the remainder of Dr. Kent Hovind's question and answer series.
And some people say, well, why don't we dig up their cities? Well, the problem is we're looking at what things that we need today and assuming that they needed them before the flood. Suppose they lived in a world with perfect weather. You don't need a house. Just go sleep on the grass. Suppose you lived in a world where none of the animals would harm you. All the animals were friendly. Everything's vegetarian, Genesis 1:29. Again, you don't need a house. And why don't we find their cars? Well, man, if you're 9 or 10 or 12 feet tall and can run 50 miles an hour, and everything's growing in your yard, you don't need to go anywhere anyway. Why do you need a highway system? Why do you need a car? You don't need airplanes. You don't need trains. So if you can think Garden of Eden conditions, the things that they needed would not be the same things that we need. After the flood, the people were still living to be 400 years old. So a lot of this knowledge would be retained. Now today, about the time you know everything, you're 80 years old and you die. Now you can't pass it on to anybody else. But if you could live to be 400 or 500, you could pass on your knowledge to your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandchild. So it'd just be a real different world back then. So a lot of this knowledge, I think, went to the grave. But in the old days, you could go talk to your great-great-great-great-grandfather and get advice. And he'd give you some really cool advice on how to do certain things. Many civilizations after the flood would arise very quickly. If you got a bunch of smart people Noah's sons, having, 15, 20 kids per family or whatever, and they're going to go off to this area and they're going to build their own civilization. Well, it wouldn't take them long as they've got high IQ. They might not have all the technology. They might have to make stone tools at first, until they can dig a hole to find the iron to melt it down to make the steel tools. They would know how to do it. It's kind of a Gilligan's Island situation. But within 50 years, you could build a civilization. You look at Robinson Crusoe, lands on an island. Say after 20 years, he's got a whole, got a farm, got a house, got a fort, did it all himself, So yeah, it doesn't, especially you get smart people in situations like that, you can build a civilization in a hurry. It's interesting, if you study history, all of the ancient civilizations, the Babylonians, the Sumerians, the Greeks, or the Chinese, they just arose out of nowhere. Poof, there's a civilization. There's no evidence of this stuff they teach in school, of them going from hunters and gatherers and grunts and groans, caveman stuff, becoming civilized and building cities. There's no evidence of that. Farther back you go, it's all of a sudden, poof, there's the beginning of the Egyptian civilization, the beginning of the Chinese civilization, just like they moved in and built it in less than 100 years. So some strange things have been found in the fossils, as in the ground, that would indicate man used to be really smart. This little airplane, for instance, is in the Smithsonian, I believe. Right, yeah, in Smithsonian. It was found in a grave in Colombia. It's about 1,000 years old. But it's an airplane, quite obviously, with all the features of an airplane. But it can't be an airplane, according to the evolutionist, so therefore they have it labelized in the Smithsonian as a stylized insect. Now tell me, does that look like a stylized insect to you? See, they can't admit that ancient man knew about airplanes because that would go against the theory. The theory says modern man is smart, ancient man was stupid, he was, a chimpanzee walking on four most of the time, slowly came up, and here we are today, the gods of the universe. That's the thinking in their mind. Actually, the evidence shows the opposite of that. Here's an airplane, again, found in an Egyptian tomb this time, 2,100 years old, pre-Christ. How did they know about airplanes? A little model airplane. They knew about flight. This iron pot, we've got a model of it here, was found inside a lump of coal. This is a replica. You can get a replica from Carl Baugh. They're breaking open a lump of coal, and there's an iron pot inside. They examine the coal that comes out, and it's molded right to the pot on both sides. The coal formed around the iron pot. What would you conclude? That a coal miner dropped it? No, because then the coal won't be conformed to the pot. I would conclude that they had iron and were making iron vessels before the flood. During the flood, they got buried in a forest of trees and squished and turned to coal, and of course it's not going to affect the iron any. How do you get an iron pot and a lump of coal? Ancient man must have been smart, not primitive. In Peru, they've got giant stone walls like the one in the picture here. These stone walls are phenomenal. Some of the rocks in there are so huge, we can't even move them today. There's more in the Puzzle of Ancient Man about that topic if you want to read more, but there's one of the stones down in Peru weighs 20,000 tons. Now, to give you an idea how big that is, the largest crane on Earth today can lift 3,000 tons. I think they just built one in Japan, if I recall, for unloading ships. I just heard about it in 2003 or 4, that can lift 6,000 tons. Something like that. That may be the new, somebody's going to say, oh, Hovind, you're wrong, it's more, 3,000 is wrong, you're lying. I'm not lying, I just don't know. I think it's 6,000 tons now, okay? But still, you've got stones up here that weigh 20,000 tons. How did they move that? Who did it and how did they do it? I don't think it's logical to say ancient man was primitive. They must have known something we don't know today. Like this guy said, what is truly impossible about the block is that it's the size of a 5-story house and weighs 20,000 tons. We have no combination of machinery today that could dislodge such a weight, let alone move it. We can't even break it loose from the ground, let alone move it. We can't do it. This bell was found inside a lump of coal in West Virginia. The guy who had it on his desk for years later moved to Central Florida, and I've not been able to, he's an old man now, I've not been able to get a hold of him lately, so if you get his address, let me know. Because I think he needs to have that on display at a Creation Museum in Pensacola, Florida. That's what I think. This thing was analyzed, and they said, well, this is some kind of strange, old, like a Buddhist-type god on top of here. But how could you find a brass bell inside coal? Ancient man knew how to work with all the metals. The Bible says Tubal-Cain was an artificer in brass and iron. That's Adam's grandson. They were already working with brass and iron. This little zinc and silver vessel was found inside rock, supposed to be 600 million years old. Well, I disagree with the 600 million year part, but they knew about things. There's a great article in The Puzzle of Ancient Man about the little device found in a ship that was sunk in 100 BC in the Aegean Sea, which is right next to Greece. Okay? It's got an analog computer on board. How on earth did they know about analog computers in 100 BC? It's called the Antikythera device, Antikythera mechanism. The History Channel in March of 2005 was amazing. It had a whole hour-long message about this Antikythera device found in Greece. They actually built a working model of it and said this thing, by turning the crank, would be able to predict where the planets would be or the sun would be. It'd be like an amazing computer for ships navigating. 100 BC. No, ancient man was not primitive. You can get copies of this hammer from our museum. This Dr. Baugh has the original in his museum. He lets us make replicas of it. This was found in 1934 in Texas, New London, Texas. When they first found the hammer, the handle was petrified, what was left of it. And they looked at the hammer and said, man, it was in solid rock. I said, what on earth? How can a hammer be in rock? And the rock was supposed to be 400 million years old. So, of course, guys who believe in evolution would say, well, that just proves aliens visited the planet 400 million years ago and one of them dropped his hammer. I mean, that's the kind of logic they use. Instead of thinking, you know, maybe our whole time scale's wrong. They will never consider that. They cut a little notch in the hammer with a file in 1934 to see what kind of metal it was. It is still not rusted, the notch. It's a type of a stainless steel. Battelle Laboratory analyzed it and said it's 96% iron, 2.6% chlorine, and 0.75% sulfur. And then they said, you know, we don't think you can get those elements to combine unless you do it under a much stronger magnetic field. Probably the pre-flood Earth had a magnetic field 8 or 10 times stronger than what we have today. This was found in Iraq, this little battery. Quite a few of these were found. They knew about electricity 2,000 years ago. The Egyptians apparently knew about electricity. Here's a hieroglyphic showing snakes in some kind of chamber hooked with a wire going to a little generator of some kind. We don't know. There are two theories. One is they are using electricity to mummify the snake or do something, or they're using electric eels to produce the electricity. I don't know which way the electricity is going, or even if it's electricity. But I think we've got the wrong idea to say modern man is smart and ancient man was stupid. I think ancient man knew a lot. They knew about brain surgery. Quite a few skulls are found like this. This process is called trepanning. They would actually cut into somebody's head, and many are found with the hole healed over, which indicates the patient lived. Okay? I mean, cutting a hole in the head is no big deal. But some of the Ica stones from Peru show what appears to be brain surgery. Dr. Dennis Swift, that spoke at our boot camp in 2004, has some of the instruments, the hardened copper instruments that they would use for brain surgery, or for surgery, period. Okay? Ancient man knew how to do all kinds of things with people's heads, besides cut them open and let them heal. They did make strange shapes to the heads. They apparently did heart surgery. From some of the Ica stones anyway, it appears that they're doing, open heart surgery. Here's a guy with an artificial limb attached, so they knew about that. That would have been, 2,000 years ago. This little machine appears to be some kind of steam engine. They might have known about some kind of power like that 2,000 years ago. They certainly knew about the wheel. This little cat was found on wheels to move around, a little kid's toy apparently, in some of the Inca Indian tombs. They certainly were smart as far as biology goes. This little spider is one of the, little nothing, it's 150 feet tall. It's one of the Nazca Line images. We cover some of that on video too, but they knew that to make this spider with no eyes, because it's blind, these little spiders are extremely rare. It's only 1/8 of an inch long, and it lives in caves, in the dark, in the Amazon, 1,000 miles away from where the drawing is. So they really knew about their biology. And they knew to make the one leg longer, and it's the correct leg too. Third leg down on the right side. That leg, during mating season, for 15 seconds, that one leg grows longer and exchanges DNA off the tip of that leg. And they knew that. So they were not ancient, not stupid. They were ancient, but they were not stupid. This Pira Reis map of 1513 shows Antarctica with no ice on it. How did they know to, first of all, how did they find Antarctica? How did they know to map it with no ice? Something was different, okay? This metallic sphere was found in South Africa. It has 3 parallel grooves around the equator, but it was found in what they said was pre-Cambrian material, 2.8 billion years old. Well, of course, I disagree with the 2.8 billion years. It's a human artifact, quite obviously, found in rock, supposed to be 2.8 billion years old. But see, rather than question, maybe it's not 2 billion years old, guys like Michael Cremo, who wrote the great book on stuff like this, it's called OOPART, Out-of-Place Artifacts, OOPART. He studies all kinds of these things. Now, he's a Hindu. Michael Cremo has the book Hidden History of the Human Race. He says this proves aliens came and visited the earth 2.8 billion years ago. Rather than question, hey, wait, maybe the whole geologic column is wrong, they just, I don't know why, they're not allowed to question that. His book's called The Hidden History of the Human Race. It's in our library if you want to read that. Here's a mortar and pestle, to grind wheat or grind flour with, grind corn. The problem is, it's in rock, supposed to be 33 to 55 million years old, way before man got here. So what do you conclude? Well, again, aliens came, visited the planet. These little spirals were found. The thing that's amazing about these little spirals, they're made of tungsten. Very difficult metal to work with, very difficult to refine. And these things are 3/10,000ths of an inch, 3/10,000ths of a millimeter in diameter. And it follows the perfect golden mean ratio. Same thing used in the Fibonacci sequence, 1 to 1.618. How do they know about that? A lot of these are found in Russia. Pavel, if you get over there, bring me some of these. I want some of these for the museum. These little amazing little spirals. There's all kinds of stuff on the internet about that if you want to read it. Well, what about the pyramid? Who built the Great Pyramid? If we're thinking ancient man is, dumb, how did they build the big pyramid? There are 66 copies of the original, apparently. There appear to be 67 of these giant stone pyramids found around the world. Who built them and why? Well, there's not much question on the 66 copies, who built them. It was the Egyptians or the, South American Mayan Indians or something. But who built that original one? The original pyramid is often called the Great Pyramid. It is by far the largest of the pyramids, and it's very different in that there are no inscriptions found in it, other than a few marks the builders apparently made. Put this rock on top of this one. But all the rest of the pyramids in Egypt have all kinds of hieroglyphics. This is King Herman, the greatest guy that ever lived, blah, blah, blah. Not this one. The greatest pyramid, the biggest building on earth by far, has no inscriptions. Who built it? Why was it built? Well, there are 4 theories about the Great Pyramid, and they fall into 2 general categories. One theory says it was built before the flood by some godly people, i.e. Adam, Enoch maybe, I don't know. And the purpose of it was to preserve some ancient knowledge, because there are some amazing mathematical formulas in the pyramid. Like, twice the height divided by the base is the value of pi, 3.14159, I forget. There's all kinds of amazing mathematics in the Great Pyramid. So one theory says it was built by godly people before the flood. Second theory says it's built by heathen before the flood. It's just a heathen structure, some kind of temple worship or something. The third theory says it's built by godly people after the flood. And the fourth one says it's built by heathen after the flood. Probably it was not built during the flood. I think we could probably all agree on that, okay? Not a good time to build a pyramid. I kind of lean toward number 1, but I wouldn't prove that. I couldn't prove it and wouldn't be dogmatic about it. I think some godly people, probably Enoch, built this pyramid to preserve the gospel story. One of the theories on all this is, of course, Adam did not have a Bible. So God gave him the gospel story in the stars. This is what many people think, and I kind of lean that way, but though I'm willing to discuss it. Noah did not have a Bible. And if the canopy was gone that used to protect them and probably amplified the light so they could see the stars better before the flood, 20 inches or 30 inches of ice, compacted, super frozen like we talked about on video 2, that canopy before the flood would have actually made it easier to see the stars, and they could actually hear the music of the stars. The zodiac, that's one of the theories. But Noah didn't have a Bible. He had a couple chapters, because Adam actually wrote part of Genesis. Okay, we cover that in the teledose coming up here soon. So God gave them the gospel in stone. This is how it preaches good. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But basically, there used to be the gospel in stars, then there was the gospel in stone, and today we have the gospel in Scripture. The 3 different ways. Now, let's assume that there may be some truth to that and go from there. If there isn't, it's not a big deal. I won't lose any sleep over it. But the Great Pyramid is an amazing structure. By far the largest building on the planet today. Still, Largest building in the world, built bigger than anything ever built by man since. Some people think the Isaiah 19:19 passage is referring to the pyramid. It says, "In that day there shall be an altar to the Lord in the midst of the land of Egypt, and a pillar at the border thereof. And it shall be for a sign and a witness." There are quite a few folks who think that the pyramid is this is it. Because their teaching goes that Egypt split into two kingdoms, northern and southern kingdom, and they were fighting in civil war kind of stuff, and this pyramid is right on the border. And then when they united, it's now in the midst thereof. So it is both at the border and in the midst. Otherwise, how could a building be that way? Now, of course, the Jehovah's Witnesses have gone crazy with the pyramid. There are all kinds of books by Jehovah's Witnesses thinking, oh, this prophesies everything and proves Jehovah's Witnesses are right, And they kind of take it to real wild extremes. And there are many books available on the pyramid, some of which are absolutely loony. But it's very interesting reading. The pyramid is a huge building. It goes up four sides to the top, and the top stone was never installed. If you look at the diagram here, there's only one door into the pyramid. Nobody could find the door until 800 AD. That pyramid sat there for thousands of years, and nobody could find their way in. Finally, in 800 AD, some Arabs got a hammer and chisel and just started pounding a hole, chiseled their way into the pyramid. They chiseled and chiseled for months. And the guy kept telling his workers, oh, there's going to be lots of gold in here. You're all going to be rich, blah, blah, blah. Well, finally, after months and months of chiseling, everybody's getting tired of going in, digging a hole in the rock, okay, because it was solid rock. Finally, they were close to giving up, and they heard a noise of a rock falling. And he said, oh, it came from over that way. Let's chisel there. They chiseled over, and they hit one of the passages in the middle, and then had to work their way backwards to find the door. Had they known where it was, they could have walked up and just pushed it right open. But nobody could find this door for centuries. Well, once they found the pyramid and mapped it out, you see it's got an entrance where the A is. The entrance, only one entrance in, it immediately takes you on the broad road down to the pit, letter C. Or you can take a choice to make a turn and go up channel E there, up the narrow road that goes to the king's chamber. So your choice is the broad way that leads to the pit or the narrow way that leads to the king's chamber. Now that'll preach. It sounds like there's a little gospel in there somewhere, right? If you get to the king's chamber, you find yourself in an empty tomb where nobody ever rotted, no bodies decomposed in there, and it's on the 50th row of stones. What's that all mean? I don't know. There's a grand gallery that some people think has marks along the way, that in those marks, if they go by pyramid inches, which is a little bigger than our inch, the pyramid inch, they say each one marks a year, and they say on this grand gallery that it's got marked off where World War I is, World War II, major events through world history are supposedly marked off in the grand gallery. That's some of the stuff you read in these books when you read about the pyramid. It's the largest building by far. It contains enough stone to build a 10-foot high brick wall all the way around Texas, or France. They're about the same size. 10-foot high brick wall around Texas. The top of the pyramid is 455 feet high. The 50th row of stones, which is interesting, the 50th year jubilee, the 50th row of stones is where the king's chamber is. And those who teach that the pyramid has Christian symbolism, of course, will jump on this type of thing, the broad way, the narrow way, the king's chamber, etc. Or you go down to the pit. In the king's chamber is an empty tomb. I was told, I didn't check it out, maybe it's not correct, but it has the same volume, this empty tomb, as the Ark of the Covenant. You take the length times the width times the height, it equals the volume of the Ark of the Covenant. Maybe somebody can check it out, let me know if that's correct. But originally, the pyramid was covered by 144,000 smooth, polished casing stones. Each one weighed about, I believe they said 10 tons were the casing stones. They fit together so tightly, in many cases you couldn't even find the seam. And in all cases, I was told, you can't even get a piece of paper between them. Imagine a 10-ton stone fitting together with the next one so tightly you can't even get paper between it. No mortar. I mean, today we build brick walls and put mortar in there, and you can look at the brick on the house here, and some of them are straight and some of them are not too straight. The bricklayer's getting a little bit of a hurry. These stones are massive, and they didn't even use mortar, and they fit together flawlessly. And the top stone was never installed. And those who teach it's a Christian building or Christian principles in there say 144,000, Revelation chapter 7, 144,000. Bible talks about the whole body fitly joined together. And they'll say, see, this is evidence that has some Christian symbolism. And maybe it does, I don't know. Ephesians chapter 4, the whole body fitly joined together. Matthew 21 talks about the stone that the builders rejected. Now, the Great Pyramid never did have a chief cornerstone. Imagine the largest, neatest building on the planet, no cornerstone. Why would they stop one rock short? Why didn't they finish the job? Well, I don't know. There are a couple theories about that, but in Mark 12 it talks about the scripture. Scripture says, the stone that the builders rejected. Luke 20, the stone that the builders rejected, the same has become the head of the corner. This is obviously referring to Jesus Christ. In Daniel, it tells about the stone that was cut out of the mountain without hands and smote the image on the feet in the book of Daniel. Could this stone be Jesus Christ, who's going to make his own kingdom on the world? Revelation 21 talks about the new Jerusalem coming down from God out of heaven. There are those who teach that the New Jerusalem, the city, and the Bible tells us the great city, the holy Jerusalem descending out of heaven, will be clear as crystal, 4 square, and 12,000 furlongs. That's 1,379 miles. So there's going to be a city in Revelation 21 that is 1,300 or 1,400 miles by 1,400 miles by 1,400 miles. And everybody assumes it's going to be a cube. Maybe so, I don't know. But maybe it's a pyramid, because that's a structure that could also have those dimensions and it would lie 4 square. And if it's a pyramid, pyramids only have 1 cornerstone right on top, whereas other buildings would have 4. So there are those who teach that the Great Pyramid is the New Jerusalem is going to be in the shape of a great pyramid, and Jesus Christ is the chief cornerstone, and he is the light of the world. And if the whole thing's clear as crystal, then the light just kind of translucent. The light goes right through. So he is the light thereof. The first 13 verses in the Bible starts off with this: the world has light, but it has no sun. The last 26 verses of the Bible, the world has light, but has no sun. He is the light thereof. And so maybe the pyramid is symbolic of that. I don't know. Noah Hutchins got a good book on that if you want to read it. And of course, if any of this is true, it's obvious Satan would use this as a, pervert it for his use. And the Great Pyramid on the back of your dollar bill is a Masonic Lodge symbol, which has 13 rows of stones representing the 13 degrees in the Blue Lodge. The chief cornerstone is not yet in place, and many people say this represents Lucifer, and he's going to come down and establish his kingdom, when actually, God's going to establish his kingdom toward the end. But which one's right? I don't know. I kind of lead toward number 1, but I wouldn't be dogmatic. The Bible isn't clear. Next question. The textbooks often teach the earth was a hot, molten mass. This earth science book says, as the earth formed, it was hot, and there were large pools of bubbling lava. Well, now the Bible says, in Genesis chapter 1, that the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. So, was the earth a hot, molten mass, and it slowly cooled down over billions of years, or was it created underwater, which means, of course, it has to be less than 212 degrees. It's not a hot, molten mass. Somebody's wrong. Either the Bible is wrong, or the textbooks are wrong about the earth being, a hot, molten mass. So, what is the evidence? What's the truth about this? One of the neatest books on this topic is this one we referred to earlier by Robert Gentry, called Creation's Tiny Mystery. He spent years studying radiopolonium halos, which are little tiny rings. They are only visible with a microscope, and they're found in granites. Every type of granite all over the world contains these little radiopolonium halos, little tiny circles in the rock. Well, what are they? Well, polonium is one of the many elements on the periodic table. As polonium decays, it's radioactive, it's dropping to another level, it sends off little fragments, kind of like a hand grenade. The problem is polonium has a really, really short half-life, like 164 thousandths of a second. So if this was taking place in hot molten rock, it would decay, the polonium would decay, poof, make its little halo, and the rock is liquid, so it would disappear, it would flow away. Just like the fireworks from the 4th of July don't stay there in the sky all year. It goes up, poof, makes a little ring, and then falls down. But if you could explode a hand grenade in a giant block of Jell-O, the fragments would go out and stick and be preserved. The only way you could preserve a ring, a halo, would be to do it in something that is, like a giant block of Jell-O, or in something already solid. The way to get these little polonium halos preserved, which are found all over the world, is to do it while the rock is already solid. Robert Gentry was writing all kinds of articles about this radiopolonium halo, saying, look, this indicates the earth was never a hot molten rock. And granite is an interesting rock. I don't think anybody knows for sure how granite formed. If you melt granite and then let it cool down, it does not turn back to granite. It turns to rhyolite. You can see a picture of rhyolite here. So all the granites have these polonium halos. What does that mean? apparently granite was the original created foundation stone. That was the original created rock. It's the only way to get these little halos in there that I know. You can talk to Robert Gentry. His website is halos.com and get much more of the technical information on this. So I think the evidence would point to the fact the Earth was never hot molten rock. And then Nova TV program, they ran an article in summer of 05. They said, oxygen-18 found in 4.4 billion year old zircons show it had contact with large quantities of water. Why don't they get it? If these little zircon crystals, which are extremely tiny, have evidence, show us that they had contact with large quantities of water, 4.4 billion years old. I don't buy that, of course, for a second. But their own evidence ought to show them the Earth was never a hot molten mass. Never. Often in seminars I get asked the question, what about global warming? Is the Earth really getting hotter? Well, I don't know. I've lived on it for 53 years now, but to me it seems about the same as it's always been. But of course that's a short time frame compared to the big picture. According to the 1 Corinthians, it says the earth is the Lord's. God owns the world. Psalmist said, Psalm 8, when I consider the heavens, and he made man to have dominion over them. Our job is to be the tenant. God's the owner. He's the landlord. We're the tenant. Our job is to take care of his earth. It doesn't belong to us, but we're supposed to take care of it. It belongs to him. Now, Karl Marx, in his Communist Manifesto, gave 10 ways to destroy a capitalist country and turn it into a communist country. Number 1 was abolish private property. That was essential to destroy capitalism. Nobody's allowed to have private property. Well, if you read through the Bible in Leviticus 25, talks about in the 50th year they have the year of Jubilee. You proclaim liberty throughout the land and everybody returns to his possession. There's a good link here between liberty and having your own possessions. See, if you own it, you control it. So if God created the world, he owns it. He controls it, and he's let man use it for his glory. And there are those who don't like that idea, guys like Karl Marx and communists. They think, no, the world belongs to us, and we control it. There is no God. But in 1 Kings, it talks about having your own vine, your own fig tree, drink water out of your own cistern, running waters out of your own well. Private property is essential to liberty. And Peter Burrell said, we reject the idea of private property. Kids in school today are having pledges like this. Talk about stupid. This kind of stuff's on the walls of many public schools. I pledge allegiance to the earth, which I do love and depend on, and to all life on land, air, and sea, which is as much a part of earth as me. This one says, I pledge allegiance to the world, to care for earth, sea, and air, to honor every living thing with peace and justice everywhere. Jacob Redstead told me a couple years ago, he said when he was in 3rd grade in elementary school in Minnesota, his teacher, Miss Klophocky, took down the American flag and had the 3rd graders pledge to the earth instead. Can you imagine? Boys and girls, we're going to pledge to the world today. We're starting these kids in 3rd grade. Half the cartoons on Saturday morning TV now are that kind of way, Destroy the mean old capitalists, that are destroying the world, and save the planet, Captain Planet. There's all kinds of cartoons designed to get the kids thinking that, we got to save the earth. Well, I am against pollution and I'm against destroying things unnecessarily, okay? But the real purpose of this environmental movement and the big scare about global warming is not to save the earth. The purpose is to establish communist plank number 1. Abolish private property. They want you to have to get a permit to cut down a tree on your own property. One guy in California had this tree was growing, obviously, into his house. And it was crushing the front porch. The house was 100 and some years old. And it had been planted and the tree was growing and was caving in the front porch. So he went to get a permit to cut down the tree. And they said, you can't cut down the tree because, the trees are protected. He said, well, then I need to get a permit to remodel my porch. They said, no, that's a house is 100 years old. That's a historic building. You can't remodel the porch. Talk about stupid. Why go ask for a permit at all? That's what starts the problem. But see, once people sign a contract to become a servant of whoever, now you're under contractual law. If you sign a contract to become 501c3, well, then you better do everything they tell you to do. Okay? So don't sign the contract. Don't get yourself tangled up in those things. And that gets difficult to do. But there's a good book on the global warming question if you want to read more. It's called Facts, Not Fear. I'm sure it's available lots of places, but Marilyn Quayle, Dan Quayle's wife, former vice president, wrote the foreword to it. What is the real evidence about global warming? And you can take a look through that if you'd like. It's in our library, or order your own if you'd like. They said in a magazine that man-made rainforest baffles scientists. They said a man-made rainforest that should have taken millennia to evolve has baffled scientists by springing up in just 150 years. This business of us destroying the planet and destroying these ancient rainforests and, oh, we're going to ruin the world and the sky is falling is, I think, baloney. And there are a lot of environmentalists that are probably very sincere, very intelligent, and very wrong. And they're fighting the wrong battle. Now, it's true, people abuse the environment, and when somebody's dumping chemicals upstream from my house, I'm going to sue them and say, don't dump that in my water supply, okay? That's fine. But if there's an environmental problem, is the government the one to fix it? Show me anything they fixed. If they fix it, it'll cost 10 times more than it should, and probably still won't be right. I do believe in global warming, though. The Bible says in Revelation 16, the fourth angel poured out his vial upon the sun, and the power was given to him to scorch men with fire. There's going to be global warming. Hasn't happened yet. Coming soon to a city near you.
And that was it. There you have it, folks. That was the last of that particular little series of Dr. Ken Hovind. And I'm going to have to agree with him on that last part especially. I personally don't believe in global warming, at least not as it's being portrayed. As it's being portrayed out there in the fake news, I don't believe in it one bit. I think it's all a money-making scam. And, of course, I can go back several years. I should do a podcast on that. Because, when I was a kid, they were telling people that you couldn't go outside because of acid rain. And I remember they would have pictures of the earth half melted and rain on it. And they were saying you can't even go outside anymore because the rain will literally eat your skin off. Of course, that never happened. And so it's just one after another. And that's what a lot of people don't understand is about every 10 years, they come up with a new one that's so far-fetched, it's unbelievable. And it never happens. But, if the people at that very moment believe it, it's just what it is. They're looking for the ones that are gullible. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this particular one. We're going to put some more up. We're going to keep going. We've got a lot more things to talk about. Planning on having some more guests on here, hopefully some very interesting guests pretty soon. So if you need anything, give us an email. Please like it, share it, do whatever, to help get the name out there, and go check out our new website. We're going to have some items for sale on there too, possibly. So I'm looking forward to that. So thanks again for listening. This is Kenny Williamson. God bless you.